Hello, everybody. Today I was thinking that I would share with you a few thoughts about fragility and vulnerability, and maybe I can um, explore this for a while and see whether that would be useful for you. So, first of all, let me that thanks Jilly. Thank you, Jilly, for a lovely, lovely scarf. And also thank you for all my subscribers, which are slowly growing. And we'll see what we can do with this fragility and vulnerability. What is the difference? Whether it's the same, sometimes people use it as synonymous, but actually slightly different words, and obviously they carry a different meaning. But as usual, let me just read you something at the beginning. This is a Maria Rilke little quote. I would like to beg you to have patience with everything unresolved in your heart and to try to love the questions themselves as if they were locked rooms or books written in very foreign language. Don't search for the answers which could not be given to you now, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday, far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing, live your way into the answer. And that's a profound saying, because of course, if we are very fragile, which is usually connected to shame, to trauma, to unresolved issues, we may not be able to wait. We might be too impulsive. We might be frightened that if we don't have an answer, that we will appear to be stupid, or that we will not be able to enter any situation in which we indeed could possibly be vulnerable. Fragility will stop us from being vulnerable. Fragility is a sign of a delicacy which is known to children and babies. Also, at the same time, life is fragile, love is fragile, we are fragile. So how can we then conquer or indeed accept our fragility? Can we actually live with a fragility? Or is it possibly better if we're vulnerable? Because vulnerability is something which is necessary for human relationship. So I would like to quote something else so we can continue with that thought. Deliver me from my own shadows, my Lord, from the wrecks and confusions of my days, for the night is dark and thy pilgrim is blinded. Hold thou my hand. So when we are fragile, we need a help. And when we're vulnerable, we need help. But maybe with vulnerability, we can actually be more cooperative with God and indeed with ourselves. When we enter life and a relationship with life or relationship with ourselves or the other, as Coelho once said it, to have a strongest love, we must actually accept that we have to demonstrate our vulnerability. In that love, we have to demonstrate our nakedness. So to be vulnerable, it means to be open, it means to be real, it means to be naked. It means to have a courage to be seen for who we really are, warts and all. When we are just fragile, that might not be possible. Fragility will stop us from that. It's okay for children to be fragile. And as one lady who Nikita Gill in the book, a great goddess, said, "You're not made out of paper. If you were, you would burn long time ago." So what she's talking about and what I'm talking about, that occasionally we are behaving as if we are immensely precious and delicate. And that stops us from proper relationship. That also stops us from the truth very often, because we can hide behind that fragility. Of course, clinically we can say that there are various temperament, which would that be more obvious. For instance, histrionic or hysteric, or indeed shame-based people, or indeed post-traumatic people. But if we are entering some process of life and healing, we may end up being more vulnerable, which would be much better. In the vulnerable situation, we allow life and love to change us. We don't seek exactly maybe mirroring. We don't seek exactly applause. We don't seek exactly being completely adored. We are able to sustain and survive much more situation where we are actually seen and we're actually heard. And maybe what other people see in us, it's not the best what we wish for. Even in the businesses, very often you might hear a good leader would say, I have to be vulnerable. I have to see and show my people that I am capable of being a human being, that I don't need to identify with being a chief, I don't need to identify with being a boss, I don't need to identify with controlling everybody. I have to invite people to cooperate with me. When we lose our vulnerability, and often men come and tell me and observe that when the woman loses vulnerability, she loses some kind of part of her feminine, because the feminine is about being able to hold the tension between man and woman. It's being able to serve in that reflective way. It's being able to relate. And if you are too fragile and too ego-centered and too terrified and too shame, you might enter into power struggle. You might enter into a situation where you will actually be robbing your relationship of the beauty and sense of relationship. So it's very important for the woman to learn to be vulnerable, as much as for a man. But for instance, vulnerability may mean that you love somebody and you know that that person may not love you back. With our fragility, more prone to ego-centeredness, we will not be able to sustain that. With vulnerability, we may experience that person we love and adore may leave us tomorrow, abandon us forever, and we have to sustain it. If we are not vulnerable, we will never enter any loving relationship. If we're not vulnerable, our heart may never be broken, but that means that we never even feel alive, for that matter. So in a sense, vulnerability means that we have to put aside our armor. We have to put aside our defenses, we have to put aside point scoring, we have to put aside power struggle, we have to put aside revenge, we have to put aside acting out. It means to be naked. It means to be seen, to be heard. And it means that we have to embrace the fragility of ours, but contain it, so we can be vulnerable. In a way, vulnerability means we might move towards celebrating our flaws. We know that we don't have to be perfect. I remember one of my colleagues who is passed away, and I used to, in the early days of my recovery, used to say, Maya, I love you just as well. You don't have to be perfect for me to love you. And it was really terrifying for me to hear it at that time, as I was working on my traumas and coming through the wars of my own defense mechanism. I thought that she was sort of overdoing it, but she was only invited, and what a lovely relationship we had for many, many years. As I always say, if people are just fragile, okay, if we're vulnerable and people are fragile, We allow them to live like a bit like petals, flower petals. They're just fragile. They may not be in a position to be able to see us or to be able to show us who they are. We don't blame the petals for being petals, so we don't have to blame people to be petals. We just enter the mourning of the loss of those people, because they're fragile. If we are not vulnerable, we become invulnerable, and that is extremely tough, to be totally dead, to be totally stuck in that deep rooted fragility and unable to really enter a human relationship. Vulnerable means that we go into a relationship and we not worry about the outcome. We don't have to know the outcome. Therefore, we let go of control. We let go of projection. We let go of many things. Basically, we learn to live in now, in the moment, in the beauty of the moment. So we are free to respect another human being for their beauty. If we're not connected to our self-worth, if we're not connected to self-love, we will never ever be able to be vulnerable. So in a sense, as somebody said, vulnerability means that it makes us weak. But this weak also opens us up. We're not exactly a Dresden China, and we don't have to be that fragile. As one actress, I don't remember which one, Hollywood said, when I was young, I was like a Dresden China doll. But now I am tough. I have become a still kind of person. When we are vulnerable, we also can give birth to empathy, to compassion. And we're not going to a relationship to fix anybody or to be fixed by anybody. I can be empathetic. I can have compassion for you. I am not here to feel for you, but I can feel it with you. If we shame-based, we will not have courage to be vulnerable. So the use of word courage is very important. Imagine it's a powerful word, and it's connected to the vulnerable, and it's important that we seen, and it's important that we relate. If we are kind to ourselves, if we cope and heal our fragility, then we can let go of believing who we are, and we can become really who we're meant to be, and we are becoming who we're meant to be, because being vulnerable means that we have a courage to be imperfect, and that we have a courage to be seen. In love, as somebody said, that was, I think, Buddhist saying that the greatest strength a person can have is being vulnerable with somebody we love, and that is in a way is like saying, hey, if there's a quarrel or something, come back to me. I want you to be with me. And at the end, I'll read you something else. I quote something else, and then I have a lovely quote from Shakespeare, which I always love. So I'd like you to hear this little piece from Bible. For this pattern which I give you today is not hidden from you, and is not far away. It is not in heaven for you to say, who will go up to heaven and bring it down for us, so that we can hear it and do it. Nor is beyond the sea for you to say, who will cross the sea and bring it back for us, that we can hear it and do it. But the teaching is very near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart, so that you can do it. Lovely saying, Vedic saying. Mighty causes are calling us. The freeing of women, the training of children, the putting down of hate and murder and poverty, all this and more. But they will call with voices that mean work and sacrifices and death. Mercifully grant us, O God, the spirit of Esther, that we may say, I will go unto the king, and if I perish, I perish. And that's vulnerability. So let's say serenity prayer. God grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Bye for now.